Ooh, I hate that Sonic!
Sonic Adventure is a polarizing title. Some find it to be a mediocre slog, with weak storytelling and poor pacing, an early 3D title showing its age. Others find it to be terrific, with the right mix of attitude and seriousness, responsive controls, and a gorgeous presentation that still holds up under scrutiny. Where one finds ambition, another finds frivolousness. Where one sees adventure, another sees padding. Whichever side one finds themselves on, there is little doubt Sonic Team did create a game that left a lasting impression on those who played it, and debates about its merits are still being had nearly 22 years later. As I revisit Sonic Adventure yet again, I'm not playing to have a good time, rather I'm playing to learn. What is it about Sonic Adventure that some find so endearing? What is it about Sonic Adventure that some find so painful? What qualities does Sonic Adventure contain that cause such a wide range of opinions? Let's dive in. Final RPG elements are the character upgrades. Some of these are optional, others are required for progression. Sonic's first upgrade is the Lightspeed shoes, allowing him to dash across a trail of rings. This is used in later stages to cross large gaps. This can be upgraded with the optional Crystal Ring, reducing the time needed to charge it up. A second mandatory upgrade is the Ancient Light. This grants Sonic the ability to perform the Lightspeed Attack, used for attacking armored enemies. What I find most puzzling, however, is how the upgrades are utilized and pushed on the player. The player is required to obtain the Lightspeed shoes, as it triggers the shift to nighttime, opening up the casino and allowing progression. But outside of that, the utility is limited to just a few level gimmicks. The time it took to find the sewer, obtain the item, charge the damn thing, and progress the day cycle doesn't match the utility provided. Same goes for the Lightspeed Attack. There is a progression gate with a caged monkey blocking access to Red Canyon. Until the player finds the Ancient Light, they cannot dispatch the monkey and progress the adventure. And again, the utility of the Ancient Light isn't great, and I found myself using it in just one area of the entire game. Generally, it is more efficient to just take damage and continue on, rather than stopping to charge it up. Sonic's upgrades feel optional and never reach their full potential, like, say, used in interesting boss encounters. Tails has one mandatory upgrade. The Rhythm Badge allows Tails to do the continuous tail rotation attack. The acquisition of this item happens during one of the flashbacks, and Tails cannot escape until the item is found. On paper, the continuous tail attack should be helpful, but as Tails flies over enemies rather than engage them, it is somewhat pointless. Even the final boss encounter is far easier when performing a normal jump, further negating its use. Again, I can't help but feel like an optional item is forced upon the player as mandatory, and then never utilized in any meaningful way. Forcing the player to wander about this ancient world looking for an item which is never required for anything feels like a waste of the player's time. The pinball stages are another oddity. The player needs to gather 400 rings and deposit them in a vault in order to reach the end goal. Sonic and pinball have generally been a good combination in the 2D era of Sonic, but the execution here in Sonic Adventure is poor. The Knights table has the player grabbing 5 cards to make a poker hand, with better hands yielding more rings. The Sonic table has the player engaging a slot machine, and again, yielding more rings for better matches. Unfortunately, the physics engine is awful. Momentum in and velocity are almost non-existent, and the flipper physics are not grounded in reality. The table design itself isn't good either. There are few shots to hit, few modes to enable, and overall, there is little substance. This is probably for the better, as the flipper physics don't allow for precise shots anyway. While I don't mind the change of pace, the execution is lousy. And then there are 2 Sky Chase substages. These are on-rail shooter segments, but again, the depth is completely lacking. A vast majority of each stage can be completed by mashing the action button. Actually moving to avoid obstacles is rarely required from the player. Again, it just feels like variety for variety's sake. Sadly, Amy has a Tails problem. Her gameplay doesn't really match the level design. First, her acceleration is painfully slow, meaning reaching full speed can take forever or not happen at all on inclines. And this is a shame because she can do a hammer jump once she reaches full speed. It feels like there were some opportunities for this jump to be put to good use, but the potential never comes close to being realized. Instead, it feels like playing a slow character through stages designed for much faster ones. To be fair, Hot Shelter is a new stage, not available to the first 3 characters. However, instead of taking advantage of the Pico Pico hammer in clever and unique ways, Sonic Team attempted to add puzzle elements to her stages. This includes dropping color-coded blocks into color-coded squares, turning cranks, pushing stairs, and opening 5 doors. Despite being just 3 stages, Amy feels like a waste of time. The most notorious character is, of course, Big the Cat and his fishing. There are just 4 stages to fish in, and the gameplay is incredibly shallow. Just locate Froggy, cast the line, wait for Froggy to bite, yank the joystick in a direction, and hope to snag him. From here, reel him in without breaking the line. Sadly, despite being quick and easy, there is a lot of randomness involved, and I still don't have a 100% comprehension on what is expected of the player. While playing the GameCube version, snapping the joystick left or right would always snag Froggy. However, on the Dreamcast version, sometimes down was needed, but even then, I never felt confident as to why I was supposed to snap the joystick in a specific direction. Reeling Froggy in is a crapshoot as well, and he would get away even when my fishing meter hadn't reached the breaking point. In the end, I would just rapidly smash the action button. Thanks to the game mechanics, by rapidly pressing the action button, there is no risk of the line meter getting too tense and breaking. But again, mashing buttons without thought happens just a little too often in Sonic Adventure. Last but not least is E102 Gamma. This is an interesting and popular character, to say the least. Gamma starts each stage with a 3-minute countdown and must shoot down enemies to add time to the countdown. Even better, there is a combo system, so the more targets one locks onto before firing, the greater the time bonus. This sort of combo system would have been a great addition to the Sky Chase substages. So, I went through all of my footage and gathered data on what a player actually does during a playthrough of Sonic Adventure. How much time is spent in action stages and boss battles versus how much time is spent on the adventure fields grabbing upgrades, opening up action stages, triggering cutscenes, and doing character battles. How much time is spent on story elements, flight stages, load screens, and the end credits. I think this ratio of gameplay to everything else is at the root of the polarizing nature. So, I painstakingly reviewed my final playthrough playthrough and came up with a data set that I can visualize into graphs. As one can see here, Sonic's campaign is the longest by quite a margin. Additionally, nearly half of Sonic's campaign is action stages and boss fights. However, the remaining 5 campaigns are skewed heavily in the everything else category. As noted earlier, Sonic Adventure is broken into 6 campaigns with intersecting story arcs. Sonic's campaign is straightforward, chasing Eggman across the game world, destroying chaos, and finally Eggman. It comes to a satisfying conclusion, and I really don't have any major complaints. I could have done without the character battles and the flying segments, but whatever. Tails, on the other hand, is packed with filler. First, as Tails spends a majority of his time with Sonic, the cutscenes are basically the same. Sonic and Tails talk at the beach. Sonic and Tails confront Eggman in Mystic Ruins. Sonic and Tails get gassed by Eggman. Sonic and Tails meet up with Knuckles. It isn't until around the halfway point where Tails finally gets separated from Sonic and begins his own adventure, but even then, he just daydreams about Sonic. It isn't until the end of the 3rd act that Tails' campaign finally offers something fresh for the player. Eggman fires a missile at Station Square, his plan B thanks to Sonic destroying Chaos and the egg carrier. Thankfully, the missile doesn't go off and Eggman escapes his own demise. Never launch a missile at a city while you are in said city. Tails gets to the missile first, which prevents it from going off, and then Tails and Eggman tango one last time. Upon victory, Tails gains some confidence, and the story comes to an end. While the conclusion is nice, the lead-up is disjointed or non-existent. Sonic Team offers a payoff, Tails saving Station Square without the aid of Sonic, but there is no setup. A majority of a Tails playthrough is unrelated. I find myself asking, what is the point of multiple characters if I'm not learning new things? Why is Sonic Team just retelling the same story? Now, Tails does have a flashback scene where Tikal offers information about the relationship between the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald. Chaos is power, power enriched by the heart. In the final story, Tails somehow concludes Sonic is able to use the positive power remaining in the Chaos Emeralds, even after Chaos used up the negative power. Does this make any sense? No. Moving along, we have Amy Rose. It is here where I really begin to question Sonic Team's direction with the 6 intertwining stories. The campaign begins with a bird crashing into Amy's head. One of Eggman's robots wants this bird and Amy does her best to protect it. After Sonic fails to rescue her, Amy finds herself in a cell on the egg carrier. She befriends Gamma, who then frees her. But it is all for naught as Eggman extracts a Chaos Emerald from Amy's bird friend. After watching Amy save Gamma for the 3rd freaking time, Amy discovers Birdie has a family and she reunites them. Along with the gameplay not matching the stage layout and the puzzle elements being basic and uninteresting, much of the story is just repeating what the player has already seen from Sonic's campaign and later Gamma's campaign. While I think it is sweet Amy befriends and protects a bird and reunites them out of the goodness of her heart, the campaign offers very little to the overall story of Eggman and Chaos. Her flashback hints that Chaos and Tikal were friends, but the player already knows this. Amy has no story arc. At the beginning, she dreams of Sonic. At the end of the story, she wants Sonic to respect her. Nothing is resolved. The campaign does little else but offer an explanation for the origins of one of the Chaos Emeralds, an origin that really doesn't matter. So, while I applaud Sonic Team's ambition for creating a much grander adventure for Sonic's 3D outing, the execution is often poor. Far too much of Sonic Adventure is spent in the adventure fields wasting time. This includes hunting for upgrades that are rarely integrated into the gameplay and often serve as nothing but progression gates. Without a real benefit, spending time seeking them out feels like a waste. Same goes for the character battles. While I guess they could be viewed as interactive story elements, they break the continuity of the story. And the story, despite taking up a massive amount of playtime, just isn't deep. I don't need to know where all 7 Chaos Emeralds are at all times. I don't care if one is Big's lucky charm. I don't care about where Chaos gets his tail from. I don't care about how Tails came to crash this plane. I don't care about how Eggman tricked Knuckles into attacking Sonic and Tails. Sometimes it is better to just leave things to the player's imagination. There is supposed to be a payoff to these moments, but when the story pieces are filling in, it often doesn't make sense and negates the need for 6 separate campaigns in the first place. And then, of course, is all of the repeated elements. The scene between Amy and Gamma is touching, but I don't need to see it twice. Sonic already unlocked Ice Cap and Windy Valley with their respective keys, so why does the player need to do this a second or a third time? Again, the continuity is broken and the repeating gameplay elements do nothing but pad out playtime. And this is the reason why I think Sonic Adventure is so polarizing. Now, I've mostly focused on Sonic Adventure DX, the enhanced port on the GameCube. As I began my research for this video, I stumbled upon an odd rabbit hole. There is a subset of the Sonic fanbase that feels the bad reputation Sonic Adventure has is because of this GameCube port, which was then used as the basis for future ports on the Xbox and PlayStation platforms. Some find most of Sonic's bad reputation stems from this port. Some have even gone as far to say Sonic Adventure feels like a different game. I was originally only going to cover the GameCube version of Sonic Adventure. It is easier to capture footage than the Dreamcast, and I like the improved frame rate. However, I wanted to see for myself if these really are different games. And you know what? Nope. Same game. There are 2 schools of thought regarding the DX version. First is that it is very glitchy and players will randomly fall through the floor. Second, the texture changes, updated character models, and simpler lighting system degrade the atmosphere of the game to the point where it is no longer the same game. First, I am aware a glitch exists on Emerald Coast, as I've previously fallen victim to it, but on my 2 playthroughs of DX for this review, I never fell through any floor ever. In fact, my only fall through the floor moment came on my Dreamcast playthrough, not my GameCube one. In fact, I experienced many more oddities on the Dreamcast version overall, including camera hiccups and textures jittering. But randomly falling through the levels in the DX version, it just rarely happens. Unless one is looking for glitches and playing in unintended ways, this behavior appears to be exaggerated.